to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab, your ultimate podcast for mastering the mental game of clay shooting and gaining exclusive insights from the top minds in the industry. Join us as we dive into the strategies of elite athletes, uncover the secrets to peak performance, and share powerful techniques to enhance your shooting skill. Plus, get behind-the-scenes access to the leaders and innovators who are shaping the future of the clay shooting industry. Get ready to elevate your game, sharpen your focus, and gain insider knowledge from the best in the business. Let's get started. Here's your host, Don Grant.
All right, folks, welcome to Clay Mastermind with Don Grant. I am Don Grant, and we're looking at mental excellence and industry insights. I'm excited to share with you a new guest today, Blaize Whitehead, who has a lot of accomplishments as an instructor, and he's going to give you kind of an outline of who the heck he is, but also, some of the challenges that he's faced along the way so that he can be relatable to all of you all who are not necessarily in the top 10. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So a lot of folks probably know your name, but there's going to be some out there that don't. And just give us, how old are you and what are you doing and what are some of your highlights?
Okay. So I'm 23 years old. I live in northeastern Pennsylvania and love shooting, which I'm sure many of us do, and a lot of us that are watching this podcast. So some of my highlights are, some of the recent things that I've done well at, I would say, so the 2025 All-American first team, I made it on. I was number 6, which was great. And then at the 2025 Jackling's main event, I placed M1 or 3rd overall. And then in 2023 at the Western Regional, I won the 5-stand HOA. It was actually a couple-way shoot-off. I ended up shooting the best and getting HOA for that. So that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And then just recently, I got my level 1 NSCA instructor certification.
Nice. Some good stuff there. And you've also, because I've been poking around on your Facebook page, you've trained under Anthony Matarese, correct?
That is correct, yes. Yeah, me and Anthony, we've been working together for quite a few years now, actually. I would say more consistently in the past 5 or 6 years, a couple times a year. I've been with him longer than that, but it's just been like once a year or just on occasion.
Yeah. So how long have you been shooting?
So I've been shooting. My first NSCA registered tournament was in 2014. Actually, a funny story. I shot with one of my best friends now to date that I travel the country with. His name is Sean Kettemer. So I knew not a whole lot about sporting clays or what I was doing. And I remember I shot with Sean. And I was like, man, this guy is so good. I want to grow up and be like this guy. Like, I think we went through the whole course or just about the whole course. And he was down like just a handful of targets. And I'm like, this guy is like, he must be a professional. And now come the date, we travel the country together and we're best friends and just hang out when we can. So funny story how life goes.
Yeah, that's what got you involved, huh?
For sure. Yeah.
So that would have made you like how old?
So that would have made me, I would have been 14.
And what were you doing in your life at that point? Like, were you already hunting or something? Like, what made you even start to?
Yeah, so basically before that, I kind of grew up with guns and shotguns kind of around my whole life. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of birds, so pheasant and grouse hunting. My dad used to have several bird dogs. So we used to go shooting all the time, or hunting all the time, I guess I should say. Mm-hmm. And, well, I was kind of just always around it. And then I guess another shoot before that would be we went to a fundraiser, a leukemia and lymphoma fundraiser, and kind of shot for the first time sporting clays. Mm-hmm. By the end of the round, I knew I was hooked. It was one
Okay.
of the things where I was kind of like, man, this is kind of like hunting, except for you shoot a lot more, you know?
Right. Right.
And I just, a lot of great people in the community. You get to pull the trigger a lot. Sometimes that's not the case in hunting,
Uh-huh.
a lot of action and stuff like that. It was just, hit it off ever since the first moment.
Nice. So you start shooting, you have, a good friend that you're shooting with and all that. And then here you are 10, 11 years later, and you're one of the top at Jack Links, which is one of the largest events in the whole country next to nationals, right? Well, it's second next to nationals, right? So
Correct.
what do you think about your progress over that time? And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. So, as yourself, I feel like it's hard to notice improvement at times, right?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure we can all agree with that. Something I've been doing, the past couple years is I'll try and save my numbers. Kind of neat, how they could get kind of all crumpled up and everything. I try and
Mm.
keep them kind of nice. And then after each tournament, I'll kind of write my scores down on the back of it and kind of keep them just like in a log, so I could look back, in a year ahead and
Uh-huh.
be like, "Okay, what I shoot there last year? Wow, okay, I improved," because improvement's a funny thing, I think. You can notice it on other people very easily, but on yourself, sometimes it's hard to notice, if you're in the moment, you're like,
Mm.
"Man, I missed a couple. I felt like, I should have had a couple more." But it's like, "Man, look at last year," say, if you shot an 85 or something, and now this year, you're shooting consistently 90 or whatever the case is,
Uh-huh.
improved by a couple birds, you're like, "Man, wow, look at how much I've improved," you know?
Yeah,
Um,
that's
so
a
that
really great point.
that's a big thing for me because I know recently, I've had a little success and people have been like, "Wow, you're shooting great," and it's like, "Well, thank you," and it's, sometimes you gotta go back and, realize, like, how much you actually did improve.
I think that's a great suggestion, and I like your technique of using your number to write it down and then to go back and look at it and pat yourself on the back, right? Because what you're talking about is a lot of people, they just tend to go to the negative. Like they are gonna think the worst, or they're gonna be hard on themselves on those few missed targets or whatever their score was or however they perform. That they will take their brain, their mind, and end up focusing over and over and over again on that instead of acknowledging their progress and giving that pat on the back. And what I found over these years is that people are almost like afraid or have been misled to thinking you shouldn't be proud of yourself, or you shouldn't have confidence, or you shouldn't think highly of yourself. And it's a huge disservice to how things actually work. If somebody's always putting themselves down, then they will absolutely decrease their confidence. But if you're looking for, like, deliberately, like what you just said, if you're deliberately looking for your improvements or acknowledging them, then you're gonna build a snowball in a whole different direction than the other person.
Yeah, I think it varies a little bit too from course to course. I mean, one year, depending on target setters, one year it could be a different target setter than another year. So, the targets could be harder or whatever. So it's a relative kind of thing. But, you know, in the retrospect, if it's the same target setter and you improved or whatever, I think it's a good way, at least for me, to kind of be like, okay, I'm improving, I'm doing well, kind of builds confidence a little bit. You mentioned confidence there. I think confidence is a huge thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we
Mm-hmm.
all lack it at times. So I guess it's just a reassurance to myself as well that, hey, you know what you're doing. You're shooting well. You're improving. You got a good plan and everything like that. Keep at it. For sure.
Do you feel like you come into an event with that kind of mindset?
Yeah. So when I come into an event, try, you talked a little bit about negativity. I
Mm-hmm.
always try and, negativity is very easily to do, to kind of see it that way or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
always try and stay positive, which is not always the easiest thing to do. But, I always try and go in and be, mindset a little bit is been different, I would say, the last half of last year and the beginning of this year. And I would say my mindset kind of changed to I'm confident in what I'm doing. I know what to do. I'm going to go out there, give it 100%, and whatever the results are, as long as I put in 100% effort each day, well, I did the best I could, and that's it. I mean, if I go out there and I felt like I shot great, one of the best scores I ever did, and not number-wise, just, shooting-wise, like I felt like I shot really well, and someone beats me, well, hey, it was their day, it was just God-given or whatever, for them to beat me that day. But I think a big thing there is to just kind of go out and kind of have a little different mindset of, I'm going to do my best, put 100% effort in. Whatever the scores are at the end of the day, the scores are, and if I need to work on something, then hey, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. At least I know what I need to work on. If I miss a trap shot or something, or a trap heel, or I'm not real confident in, I miss one or two. Okay, well, someone could be like, oh man, I did so well on them last week, this, that, whatever. Well, it's not last week, it's this week, so maybe I need to go out and build some confidence on them, I mean, it's funny how you think you have one target figured out, and then next week you can miss it a couple times and be like, oh man, you just never know.
Yeah. So you said that this is kind of a newer mindset for you, if I understood what you were saying right, like starting halfway through last year. Was there something that happened, or where did you learn that from, or how did you figure it out, or what encouraged you to make that change?
So I've spent quite a bit of time with Anthony now, and we have gone over mindset, not only just shooting, but kind of the mindset, before you get to the tournament, kind of when you're at a tournament, and the whole tournament kind of pressure and everything. And
Nice.
For the mindset part, I think, not a whole lot in my shooting necessarily has changed, but I would say the big part that has changed would be kind of the way I look at things, the mindset. I feel like before I kind of put too much pressure on myself, like, oh, I'm going to go there and I'm going to win. You know what I mean? And then, if you get to the first station, you miss one, you're like, oh, man, you know what I mean? It's kind of like you kind of let yourself down.
Right.
I think now with the mindset of having, I'm going to go there, going to give 100% effort. If I make a mistake, how quick can I correct and get the next one,
Nice.
So
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. I think that's something everybody could kind of, relate to a little bit. You could always get down on yourself, but kind of, okay, last station I missed one or two. Okay, that's okay. That's the last station. Moving on to the next station. Try not to carry it with you. That's a big thing that I struggled with, and I'm sure many people struggle with, is trying to let that last station go and just focus one bird at a time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's impressive that you were able to get that information from Anthony, but then also sounds like successfully apply it. Because a lot of times, and it might be your age, because a lot of time, if you think of simple repetition, if somebody is in the habit of looking at what they did poorly or bad or whatever, and they've done that for 20 or 30 years, then it's not as quick to go, oh, wait, I should think about this differently, right? It takes more understanding and training and a belief that it's even going to work to think differently. So I'm impressed at how it sounds like you were fed that information, then you're like, okay, I'm going to apply this. And it sounds like you've been applying it pretty successfully. Because again, I think that's a huge difference. A lot of times people look at age as, especially in shooting sports, as reaction time and how well their eyes can see, versus younger age versus older age or vice versa. But what I've seen from the mental perspective is, if you think of a big drawer and like a file cabinet with a bunch of files in it, and all those files are like all of the crappy things that's ever happened or all the things that have gone wrong. Every time I do this, it doesn't work, and somebody who's older has a much bigger file cabinet of all of those potential negative possibilities. Now, they don't have to be negative. It could be a file cabinet full of a bunch of positive stuff too, but just tendencies of most humans is to stockpile all this crud. But when you're younger, it's a much smaller file cabinet, right? There isn't as many references to potentially negative. But also, I'm curious, your upbringing, like, Are your parents fairly positive? Have you been taught to think that way? Or it sounds like you're a very matter-of-fact person. I'm having a feeling that somebody in your family is like right to the point.
Yeah, so it's funny. Mom's always a, positive aspect out of everything. So, there's been times in tournaments where you go to and it's like, man, I felt like I shot terrible. I don't think my focus was up. I struggled on that. We'll talk kind of like on the drive back home or flight
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And she's like, but look at the positive things. She's always
Nice.
pushing for that positive, all right. So what did you learn? Okay. What do you need to work on?
Nice.
Listen, we can't get there overnight, right? So let's kind of focus on what we worked on. Okay. Hey, last week, kind of we had trouble with this target. Did you miss any of them? Oh, no, actually, I did pretty good on them this week. Okay, great. You practiced them. You
Nice.
got confidence built in them. You did well with that. Okay, maybe you missed this other target that you were confident in. Okay, so I need to go back to the drawing board, maybe with them a little bit and practice with some of them. But I think the big thing is to always try and take away the positivity.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, I mean, it's hard, even myself, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to give advice sometimes, but it's hard to do it yourself,
Right.
But, I think the kinda mindset of just going out and trying to do your best and, just letting it happen, and then just, we're humans. We're gonna make mistakes, right? I mean, in sporting clays, you don't see many 100s, right? You might on occasion, but very, very few, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, another thing is kind of when you go out there, hey, you know, we're all going to miss, right? So just go out there, be confident in your plan. Confidence is huge. It's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's hard to find confidence, Something I do before I go to a tournament, maybe 3 weeks before a tournament, I will shoot, some things out of my comfort zone. Just kind of shoot a general idea of everything. If I know who the target setter is and what they like to set, I'll try and shoot a little bit
Mm.
of everything. But that comes with time, being in the sport. I'm still working on that a little bit myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of like 2 weeks before, I won't shoot anything crazy really. I'll just kind of just build my confidence, shoot things that, I
Mm-hmm.
know I could hit,
Mm-hmm.
build repetition, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe the week before, I might shoot, Monday or Tuesday or something, early in the week. Um, Same kind of thing, nothing too crazy, just build confidence.
I like that.
And then I'll actually take a little break before I go to the tournament, so I feel sometimes, I've caught myself, trying to practice and be too ready before I get
Right.
there, and by the time I get there, I'm kinda worn out already, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Man, like, wow," like, I don't feel the intensity and everything like that, so I like to take a little break, so as soon as I get there, I'm like, "Yeah, I wanna shoot," like, I'm ready
Nice.
to do it. But
Some
sometimes it's hard if you shoot a lot of shoots back to back, it all
right.
depends what you shoot, so, like, in Florida, I actually had a case of that where I caught myself. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine that I shot with. First day at the RC Cup, I shot decent, but I missed some that I was like, man, I don't feel the intensity. Like, I feel like I'm
Mm-hmm.
practicing. I shot
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
that club the week before, probably too much, the
Mm.
same station. So it kind of just felt like practice to me.
Right.
So he's like, once this tournament's over, he said, "Do you have a gap in between?" I said, "I got 2 or 3 days." He's like, "I don't want you to, if I was to suggest something, I would say don't shoot at all them 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Go do something you like to do, go fishing, take a little break, just refresh and then come back. And when you come back, you're kind of, you know, full of energy, if you want to say."
Great advice. I'm loving it. So I was just going to rewind a little bit. You said about 2 weeks before an event, you'll start kind of shifting what you're doing. I love that. And another thing that you said is related to target setters. I've I've observed over, whatever the 15 years of helping clay shooters, especially here in the last several years, a lot of events don't necessarily publicize it, and it's not really on purpose. It's just for a lack of even thinking about it to me, I think that the target setter should be in all the marketing information. And that's not only a draw depending on the target setter, but also information. But where was I? I was at Seminole Cup. I'm like, who set the targets? Who set the targets? Who set the targets? I was just a vendor with a vendor booth. But whenever I talked to a shooter, I was like, well, who set the targets? And they're like, I don't know. I've just observed that. I think that some of the events do a good job. At Jack Links, they had a whole 2-page spread. It might have even been the centerfold, I don't know, in the program that showed who the target setters were, So I like that you're preparing in that way, preparing your mindset and understanding and maybe practicing some targets that would be similar to the style of that target setter. But also, I think every shooter knows, or they should know, that you should never change anything right before an event. So it's not the time, like that week or so before is not the time to do a good new gun mount or change from right to left or whatever, or start working on something. So, that's built into what you just said there. It's like, I am at where I'm at, and let me take it easy on myself. Let me get some understanding of what I'm up against at this particular event, and not get burnt out, not get physically worn out, not get mentally drained, not get anything, right? Like, let me prepare to go into this event the best way that I can. What about how you eat and how you drink and things like that? Do you take a look at that before and during an event?
Sure. I just want to say one instance quick on something you just said. So kind of going back to, you said you don't want to change your mount or whatever. I actually have a very funny instance for that. So before I shot nationals this year, I didn't know it because I wasn't thinking of it, but I kind of talked over it with Anthony Matarace. And now looking back at some photos and stuff, it makes total sense. My mount, actually, I've been working on this as well. A little bit I've changed as well. My mount towards the end of the season at nationals was probably at the lowest point, or close to the lowest point than it was the whole year. And I went and seen Anthony for a lesson, and we shot, and he didn't say anything about it. And I was shooting well, and, nothing drastic that I was missing necessarily. Here and there, of course, obviously, but it wasn't anything crazy. So he never mentioned it. And now looking back, now that we talk about it, we actually kind of laugh about it because, it was kind of just building that confidence right before nationals. He didn't want to say something, kind of, get my mind thinking about it. So I would go and change my mount. And my mount was actually really low, but, my confidence was there.
Right.
So, and I shot well at nationals. So therefore, it kind of, goes to show that confidence is a big thing, even if something else is a little off.
I love it. And so are you saying that you and Anthony deliberately didn't say something to you?
Yeah.
Is that
So
I love it. So
I had a lesson right before. I forget if it was the week or 2 weeks before. And he didn't say anything, and it didn't come around until after nationals. And he goes, hey, just to let you know, your mount was actually pretty low. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize until, because you don't notice sometimes when you're shooting yourself, because you can't, you're yourself. You're not looking at it. You're paying attention to, the birds and everything. And so, afterwards we kind of just laughed about it. And we're like, well, how about that?
Nice. Have you ever heard of bedside manner for a doctor?
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
Yep.
So what happens related to the mind is anytime that a human puts somebody on a pedestal, so a lot of times doctors, but definitely an instructor, somebody you look up to, like in this particular sport, you're going to look up to certain people. And what happens is you mentally put them on a pedestal. And that can be the same or different for different people, right? Like in this industry, a lot of people would probably put Anthony on a pedestal. But what happens and what bedside manner is doctors had to learn over the years to watch what they say, because what they say goes in like a direct suggestion straight to the subconscious mind, which is a suggestion, meaning like a hypnotic suggestion. There is no critical factor in your mind blocking that particular comment because you're like, well, this person knows, And so if a doctor was like, oh, you only have 6 months to live, that could go right in, and that person automatically is like doom and gloom and expecting to die versus, something like, this is going to be challenging, but there's things that we can do. and, let's get to work on taking a look at what you can do, blah, 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 right? So it's a very different way to say things or to address things. And so what you're telling me is that Anthony was aware of this concept that if he said something to you then, that it would go straight in, affect your confidence, affect your performance, make you concerned or try too hard or whatever. And so he held off, right? And that takes a lot of insight and wisdom if he truly did that deliberately, which would be awesome, because not every instructor has that kind of insight. They might say something like, "Oh, at this rate, you'll never make it in a master class," or something like that.
Yeah.
So anybody that's in a position of power or influence should really watch what they say, especially to those people that look up to them, because it does go straight in. Like if somebody else, like let's say, somebody who's only been shooting a year, who isn't that great at it, and they said something to you, it wouldn't have the same impact as somebody that you look up to. You would actually be able to filter through what that person's saying better. And that's what's called your critical factor. Yeah. So, and you keep talking about confidence, which is awesome. Confidence in my brain, it's like a big bowling ball and there's a bunch of pins. So confidence can just obliterate all sorts of things that can get in your way of having your best performance. So if you can go in there with genuine confidence and believing in yourself, you can be a very powerful force.
Yeah, I agree. And, so we're talking about confidence and everything. So at times, you'll lose confidence, right?
Mhm.
So you might be going through a round, whatever, run your first station or second station, you might miss one, you lose some confidence, which is totally normal. Something that I use that kind of helps me as well with that is I'm like, okay, all right. So I lost a little bit of confidence. Okay, no big deal. Let me get back on track. At my next station, I'm going to have a really good plan. I'm going to have really good hold points, break points, where am I going to hold my eyes? I'll kind of rehearse myself. I might get up to the station early if the squad's a little slow in front of us. I'll rehearse what I'm going to do on that station. I'm going to be, try and reassure some confidence of what I'm going to do. And then I will just go up there and give it 100% effort. And, if I run the station, I kind of look at it as, okay, great. I gained a little confidence there, and hey, if I miss there, or if it's a really tough station and I do pretty bad, okay, that's all right. Now I'm going to do the same thing at the next station, going to have a good plan, good rehearsal where I'm going to hold my eyes, and I'm just going to keep trying to do the same thing. I mean, it's a grind, it's, you gotta, can't give up, it's
Yes.
easy to give up, but it's when you don't give up and you try, you just keep going and keep grinding on the outcome, you'll be a much better shooter if you just keep trying as hard as you can, and not just give up and say, oh, whatever, I'm not going to do well this round, and it is what it is.
And it's a tricky thing between trying too hard and just being deliberate, right? Like, because a person can get to the point where they're just trying too hard. They're trying to force it, trying to duplicate, trying to be too careful, these things. It's very interesting when you step back and watch yourself, and when you understand the mind, to go, wait a minute, there's this balance in here, and it's more about being deliberate and specific and what's called mindful. Like, I'm going to be deliberate about my process. I'm going to put my mind on my process. I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. And then in those moments, actually stay there with your brain when you're doing them, meaning instead of thinking about your score, or instead of thinking about the miss or whatever. And that's where the grind is, right? It's being in that moment over and over again and being your best self in that moment.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think, it's a fine line between being too careful and too careless.
Mm.
So something that outside I kind of do is, so if the squad in front of me is kind of slow, or if not, as long as I'm not the first person up, I'll go up, rehearse my plan. And once I kind of get that sorted out, and if I have time, then I'll kind of just, I'll walk away from the station a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go sit in the cart for a minute, I'll try and talk to somebody to get my mind off it or whatever, and then when the guy in front of me is up, I'll go up, I'll rehearse my plan again. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I get in the box, as I put my shells in my gun, I remind myself, okay, I'm gonna look at the center of this bird, and then I'm gonna transition my eyes first to this second bird, and I'm gonna look at the front edge of this bird, or the black bottom, or whatever the case is. So, I think, sometimes when you go up there and you'll be like, okay, got a good plan, got this. And then sometimes if you watch too much, you'll be like, oh, actually, this person shot it here. Maybe that's a better spot because you just missed one on the one previously and you're trying to build confidence, and you might be, a little on the fence, if you want to say, with confidence. So something I kind of do is where whatever I think initially, I try and stick to it. So if I
Nice.
initially think, okay, I seen it the best here, I'm going to shoot it here, I'm going to break it here, okay, I'm going to do it. Now, that just came from shooting, right? So kind of recently as well, too, because I've had it and I'm like, wow, it looks better over there. Maybe I should shoot it over there, right? And then I'll hop in the box, kind of shoot it, and then, maybe, have not the best confidence and shoot it over there and then miss or whatever. And I'm like, man, I should have stuck to what I thought,
Nice.
what I
Yeah.
know. And so kind of just a little bit of trial and error. And for me, it just worked better if I kind of just go in and do what I initially thought.
I love it. Another very insightful thing that you're saying there. So what you're saying is to trust your intuition, trust your kind of knowing, your internal guidance, whatever you want to call it. And like that's something in life that we can practice also. So you do have that kind of that nudge, that voice, that inner knowing that it is there. And a lot of times there's what I would say is the squeaky wheel, or a lot of shooters would say the chatter, right? And that can come in and it's much louder and much more obnoxious and much more persistent. And it's all fear-based. And it's related to the ego mind. So what happens is, and what you're explaining there is that from your experience, if you watch too long, then your ego brain and your fear-based thinking starts coming in, and you start doubting and wondering and second guessing and possibly changing your plan and blah, 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 blah. And so in an attempt to avoid that happening, you're saying, I go up there, I listen to that inner voice, my intuition, that knowing. I've learned the hard way through my practice and other times where I haven't listened. And then I walk away because I got to trust it, right? I don't want to feed that other voice. It's almost like having an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. And that's what you're talking about. But in life, we can do that too. And it's a great thing, just like practicing targets. You can practice this mental skill of trusting yourself and trusting your intuition just in general in life, because it's not just shooting where you're going to have that gentle nudge or that inner knowing. And just as in shooting as in life, that plenty of times you don't listen and you're like, yeah, I knew better. I knew I shouldn't have done that. And you can build that skill set.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you put it really good. I think the big thing is just, kind of, it really just comes down to confidence, kind of,
That is, yeah.
And if you lose it, different things work for different people. You got to work out a little bit got to kind of find out what works for you in certain situations. But I think a good general rule is to, whatever you think and you see first, to do that, because then, after the tournament, you could say, okay, well, this was my initial thought and plan or whatever, and, it either worked or didn't work. And if it didn't work, okay, then you got to practice. It's not like you're trying to shoot like somebody else during a tournament. You don't want to change anything while you're at a tournament. You want to shoot it like you and do you, and then that way I think it'll help in terms of what you got to practice and what you might have to change or what you just got to keep doing.
Nice. I just remembered going back to that question for your preparation leading up to an event and even during an event. Do you eat a certain way? Like, have you got to the point where you're working on those types of things too? Like how you're eating, how you're drinking, keeping in physical good shape, sleeping good, those types of things?
Yeah. So, let's see. So it's kind of tough. So I'm 23, right? So, we all like to, when we're young, we all like to go out and have fun and be out late. And, you might have an 8 a.m. rotation the next morning or something, right?
Yeah.
So I try and look ahead a little bit at what my schedule is for the next day. So if I have an 8 a.m. rotation, then I know, you know, okay, well then when I go to the club, if I'm gonna hang out with friends afterwards, okay, great. But I'm gonna want to be back and maybe grab dinner with them or whatever. But I want to be back and take a shower and be ready for bed by whatever, 10
Mhm.
o'clock or something. I don't want to be out until midnight, you know,
Mhm.
out with friends or 2 o'clock in the morning out with friends and I shoot at 8 a.m. the next day because,
Mhm.
I'm going
That's
to be
it.
tired.
Right.
So I think it just comes down to a little bit of planning for myself, just looking ahead. And then in terms of food, I don't necessarily watch what I eat, but I try and have some good meals. Like, I try and eat, some steak, some chicken, some foods that are gonna sustain me,
Mhm.
while I'm out there really trying to grind away, gonna give me some energy. And then another funny thing actually is sometimes I have a hard time drinking water.
Yeah.
So I actually kind of built it into my pre-routine, which I'm sure some people have noticed
Mhm.
before, where I always try and make sure I have a bottle of water on me.
Mhm.
And I think I drink more water on a course than I do
In a normal day.
in a normal day. Yeah, yeah. Just because I built it into my pre-routine, like, okay, when I go up, next shooter's up there, I'm looking at the show pair, okay, take a sip of water or two, because, in different climates, like in Florida or
Mhm.
Arizona, you could be sweating and not realize, how much you're sweating or whatever because you're paying attention to shooting. And the
Mhm.
first thing that's going to go is going to be your vision,
Yes.
So I think it's a good thing to hydrate. Sometimes I'll take some powder packs with electrolytes or a little bit of
Mhm.
caffeine in it.
Mhm.
I'm not a big guy to drink coffee. I do watch that. I don't really drink coffee or energy drinks.
Mhm.
They seem to give me the jitters. Yeah. So I
Mhm.
don't tend to drink those, but I might have like a little powder pack with a little bit of caffeine or electrolytes just to kind of build me up. If I get halfway through the course and I'm like, man, I'm like exhausted,
Yeah.
And then faith is a big part of it too, so it's tough. On Sundays, always try and hit church, and praise the Lord for being here because without him, we wouldn't be here.
Mhm.
So it's tough because the tournaments are on Sunday, and mass is on Sunday. So I always try and hit church on Sunday. Sometimes that's a little bit of a struggle, just because how busy these shoots get sometimes. Um,
Mhm.
But I always try and say a prayer and everything and thank him for everything.
Well,
And
I'm glad that
then
you brought up faith, so that what you're referencing is what I call the 7 elements of peak performance. It's like how, because all these things affect your performance, like how you're eating, how you're drinking, if you're physically fit, how you're sleeping, your faith, your mental, and then also your mechanics. But since you brought up faith, that little angel and that little devil that I talked about before, the ego mind is what separates us from this greater consciousness, from God, from our higher selves, from Jesus, like however you want to look at it, or all the above. And that's what creates that separation, is this ego mind. And so when you're learning to recognize it and not listen to it, you're tapping into your greater self, your higher self. You're tapping into the opposite of fear, which is love, acceptance and being in a moment and appreciating that moment. And faith is a big part of doing that over and over again. So having faith, having the ability to understand that I'm in this moment, I'm going to be grateful for this moment, I'm going to be appreciative, that's like going into your right-mindedness, right? And so it's very powerful for many reasons, but one of the reasons is it gets you out of the little devil voice, the little devil on your shoulder. It gets you out of that, literally.
yeah, for sure, and a little bit with faith as well or whatever, having trust, same kind of thing in sporting clays, just trusting the
Mm-hmm.
process, trusting what to do and how to do
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
and also kind of part of confidence, it's kind of like, you know,
Totally.
trusting it, letting it happen. And if you make a mistake, okay, let's just, how quick can we make a correction to hit the next one, you know?
Absolutely right. It's all tied together. So everything that would be considered good or right or what contributes to your being your best self, and in this case, it happens to be related to shooting clay targets, but it's all the same. Faith in yourself, faith in a higher power. Faith is a tool. Not only, again, is it powerful because of just the nature of what it truly is, but also because you're getting out of the crud thinking. Like if you have faith, then you have confidence, right? And we already said faith is like a bowling ball. It swipes out worry, doubt, fear, second guessing, regret. Like it's very powerful.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. And then, so I guess a little bit physical fit. So I don't do anything necessarily specifically. I probably should a little more. But so before this, I used to play a lot of soccer and work out at the gym and lift weights and stuff. And then I shot occasionally. But then once I really got into sporting clays, it's tough to do it all.
Yeah.
But I think to make a little bit of time for physical activity and stuff like that is great, So back home, I'm a union electrician. I work for my dad. And so I'm always on my feet, lifting things up and down ladder. So I kind of look at that a little bit as some of my, physical activity, I guess. Yeah. And then that kind of keeps me, I guess you could say a little bit in shape or whatever, to kind of go around the course and not feel like I'm out of breath or something.
Right. Yeah. Another really important aspect. I'm curious, going back, you sound like you're, very deliberate about planning, if you have to get up at 8 a.m. or you have to shoot at 8 a.m., planning what you're going to do the night before or not do the night before. Is that from experience? Like, have you had those times? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I feel like it really comes down to who I'm on the trip with.
Yeah.
So if it comes down to, if I go with mom and dad, yeah, it's definitely a
They're
little
the
more.
partiers, right? Yeah.
It's definitely a little more, specific, like,
Tame.
okay, yeah, exactly. Let's go to bed. Okay, you got a good meal. Okay, you got your
Yeah.
vegetables, you got zucchini, whatever,
Yeah.
And then, and then if I go to a trip on my own or if I go with Sean, sometimes you got to learn to deal with the situations. If we get there, we got to sign up and be on the course and we got 30 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and sometimes, that works for people. That kind of works for him, kind of back to the thing, figuring out what works for you. You just showing up, hurry up, rushing, signing up, and then just going right out there and being ready to go. I don't think that works for a lot of people. I like to kind of have more time in the morning in case I want to get there, shoot some practice, get a feel for the course. Okay, I'm getting comfortable with the area. I know where I'm going. I don't have to drive 100 miles an hour out there.
Right.
That I don't think that, that definitely doesn't help. But for him, that kind of what works for him, just kind of back to, you got to kind of figure out what works for you, otherwise I think maybe, for him, maybe, he might overthink then, if he gets there or whatever, starts worrying about something. For me, I just like to get comfortable with the place, know where I'm going, and then therefore I feel prepared.
I love that. You're so wise for your age. I think this is really cool because you're bringing up such valid points. Who you're squatted with can play a part on your mindset, depending on how well you manage your thoughts, but also who you're staying with or who you're traveling with. I just talked to a client of mine while I was at Seminole Cup, and I was like, how's it going? And he was like, well, lesson learned, traveling with these certain people. We're sharing a house. One of them is up at 3 a.m., and making noise around the house. I'm a light sleeper. There's a train that goes by. There's all these things. And so he was like, I really have to, stay by myself. I've got to travel. Can travel with other people, but I got to learn from this. It's so important. And depending on how serious you are about having your best performance, because I think some people truly do go to these events to have fun, and that kind of fun. Like, I want everybody to have fun. I don't want people to be miserable when they're competing, even if they're a top shooter. but the kind of fun where it's like, I'm going to see my buddies, I'm going to drink all night, and I'm going to shoot the next day just because it's fun to do it,
For sure.
That's different mindset than somebody who wants to be their best and to potentially win or have a high score or get a payout or whatever.
Yeah, I feel
Mhm.
like it also comes down to a little bit of, what's your goals, what's your reasoning or whatever. Like if you want to go to a tournament and you just want to go and have fun and have a blast, okay, maybe that's for you. You know what I mean? But if you want to go and, you really truly want to do well and you want to be prepared, for me, I think it takes more planning,
Mhm.
as getting to the course a little early, getting comfortable, knowing who I'm staying with, know where I'm staying at, is it Airbnb, is it a hotel? Okay, am I staying with the parents or am I staying with friends? So therefore I know if I need to get a ride back to the house or whatever the deal is. But I think it's a good thing to kind of know your goals. Therefore, you kind of, you could plan. You could kind
And
of plan, or you could just take it by the minute and be like, I'm just having fun. Okay, well then, great. Maybe you don't need to plan as much.
great point. And the thing, we're going back to confidence again, but like knowing who you are is one thing, enforcing it is another, right? Especially when you're around your friends and all that. And it does take confidence and security, like in yourself, to go, no, I'm going to go to dinner, but I'm not going to have the drinks after, or no, I don't want that drink now, or no, there's free drinks being handed out at this event and I'm either going to not do it or have one or whatever. But to have that confidence to not give in to influence or peer pressure or it's something I've noticed in myself, not necessarily, well, it has been about drinking in my past, but now it's more like the piece of chocolate cake that's there because I'm trying to lose weight, right? Like if somebody else is eating it, I'm like, okay, I'm having some, I could see how that would carry over. Like if your buddies are having drinks, it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have one. It's no big deal. And then it could be two. And next thing you know, you're up at 9, 10, 12, 2 o'clock. So if you know thyself, like I like 9 hours of sleep. I want to be at an event, whatever, an hour, hour and a half ahead of time. I want to drive around, know where I'm going, so I'm not confused. I'm not rushing. These are, make your list and figure out what those things are. And like I said about my client, the client that I mentioned, he's like, I don't know. He's in his early 60s. He's just now being like, maybe I shouldn't stay at an Airbnb with a bunch of other people. So it doesn't matter what age you are. You got to kind of be able to stop and go, who am I? What works for me? I have plenty of evidence. And then you're going to keep learning. You're going to keep learning. And then you want to apply what you learn the next go around.
For sure. It's a little bit of trial and error, I think, as well, which it could be aggravating at times, because it's like, this sports, it's expensive. It's an expensive sport, right? So you might be like, man, I put all this money up, go there and man, like, wow, it's back to that positivity thing, I guess. And then you'll be like, man, I shot horrible, this, that, whatever. Okay, but what'd you learn? Okay, maybe you don't want to stay with them people, or maybe, I need to plan better or whatever. And then going back a little bit to, kind of having fun or being serious, I love to have fun, I like to talk to everybody and everything, but out on the course, I consider myself more of a serious person than off the course. That's when I got to focus and put my time in and really pay attention to what I'm doing. What kind of works for me. If there's a little bit of a backup, okay, yeah, I'll have a conversation with somebody and have a few laughs. But then when the squad in front of me is up, I'm going to be over there looking at the targets, getting ready for when our squad's up and ready to go.
Nice. And, again, something else that about yourself and then being deliberate about doing it that way. I have observed there are some people that do stand up there and they watch all the people shoot. And to me, when I'm observing that, I do see insecurities and I do see questioning. And a lot of the shooters that have been shooting for a long time, they're doing some form of what you said, like they're going to see the show pair and they might watch the first shooter or not, but then they're looking at the ground or they're over having a conversation or they're on their phone. Like they're doing something else. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah, definitely. Got to kind of just figure out what works for you. I think that's what it boils down to. What works for you and then a little bit of trial and error,
What do you think of the concept of it's 90% mental?
Yeah, so I think a lot of this sport comes down to mental. So, everybody's in a different position in their sport, right?
Hmm.
You got newer shooters and you have guys who've been shooting a while and everything. So it varies a little bit, but I feel like you get to a point in your game where you're like, okay, I feel like I could hit every target out there, Now can I do it right here, right now, and in the moment?
Hmm.
And I think that comes down to the 90% mental,
Hmm.
I definitely there's a lot of mental to the game. You gotta same kind of thing, gotta just kinda figure out what works for you, kinda, throw it off a coach or, somebody that helps you out or your best friend, get some advice from some different people. I know that's, something I have done, from my parents to Anthony to Sean to my buddies that don't even shoot,
Yeah, yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And, it's just getting a little piece of information from everybody and, seeing what works.
Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years related to your shotgun shooting?
So in 5 to 10 years, so recently, I've started, to give lessons. Like I said, I got my level 1 certification. So I would like to see myself, giving some more lessons, which I think is awesome. I love the sport so much that I love to, show other people and teach other people, how to shoot, how to do it properly, and how to become a better shooter, you know?
Nice.
I think that's the great part about the sport is, it's an individual sport, but off of a tournament or a competition, you could help other people, and so awesome to teach somebody and then see them do well and succeed.
Mhm.
It's an awesome feeling.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, so I'd like to see myself given some more lessons.
Mhm.
And then I would like to try, and some of my big goals are to make it on Team USA, win a regional, but basically, just go in every day, and not put any unnecessary added pressure on myself
Mhm.
and just go out and give it 100% effort. And if it's enough that day, great. And if not, then I tried my best and, you know, can't change it now. What can I work on and how can I improve?
Well, I can tell you if there's any truth to the 90% mental, you're going to go far because you got a lot of it figured out, which is really awesome. Um, I do want to tell listeners that they can get some free goodies, free access to my mental training, my Mind Mastered app, and things like that at dawngrant.com/free. So definitely check it out. And I have a feeling I know what your magic pill wisdom advice would be, but what would you say to people if you could say one piece of wisdom?
One piece of wisdom. Let's see. I would say confidence is a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes we have a hard time finding confidence. I would just say trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
I would say have faith in yourself.
Mm-hmm. That's the one I thought you'd say. Yep.
Have faith in yourself, believe in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
know you could do it, go up there, have confidence in yourself, let it rip. If it doesn't work out, then make some changes, and necessarily sometimes you don't need to make changes. Sometimes it's just maybe you didn't see the bird as good as you needed to, or you thought you were looking at it, but you didn't look at it as hard as you should have.
And be you. That's something I've heard you say a lot. Like get to know who you are and what works best for you.
Yeah, you got to be yourself. So growing up, I actually had a little bit of a funny school career, I guess. I went to public school and then I was homeschooled. And then my last 3 years of high school, I went to a private school.
Mm-hmm. A little bit of
So
everything.
exactly. So I kind of got to, experience quite a bit, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Not always having a friend group or whatever. So sometimes, to try and fit in, you try and be like other people, we'll say, right?
Right.
And that's not always the best thing. You got to be yourself, and no matter if you have one friend or 10 friends or whatever. I think you just got to be yourself and trust yourself.
Nice. Nice. Yes. I agree with that. That's a great info. How about sharing your contact info? I don't know if you have a website. How can people get a hold of you? Because you're
Yeah.
going to do this great instruction with all these people.
I appreciate it. So, yeah, you could reach out to my Facebook at Blaize Whitehead. And then my phone number is 570-396-6368, or email at Blaize, Blaize, Whitehead, WHITEHEAD, at yahoo.com.
And you're doing instruction where?
So right now I do instruction at Sporting Clays.
Mm-hmm.
March 16th. No, I'm sorry, March 15th. I just posted a flyer online. I'm doing some lessons at Mid-Hudson Sporting Clays, which is in New York. And then sometimes I do some after a tournament. So when I was down in Florida, I did a little bit of coaching there.
Mm-hmm.
So if you reach out to me, I'm sure we could figure something out and either do it after a shoot or before a shoot, whatever works between our two schedules.
Perfect. I think that's all great info. So a few different options and especially at events, which makes you totally accessible. That's great. I also want to mention that people, I give out free tips on the mental game and all that on my social media, and Clay Lab Network, and then like Clay Shooting USA, the different magazine sites. So check those things out. And Blaize, this was a great conversation. I'm super impressed with where you're at in your life already. Not only what's showing up for you as far as the outcomes, but also where you're at mentally. There's really great things to come for you, and that's super exciting seeing where you're at already.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on, and I'd just like to give a huge thank you to some of my sponsors, as Granny from PMS, Promatic, Kids and Clays, Bear Pelt, Tectonic Distillery, and Chamberlain and Diaz Real Estate.
Perfect, because what would we be without our sponsors, right? I mean, it's such a huge help to have people helping you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us on Clay Mastermind with Dawn Grant. Mental excellence and industry insights. Brought to you by the Clay Lab. We hope you found today's episode inspiring and informative. Remember, mastering the mental game is key to unlocking your full potential on the course. And through our conversations with industry leaders, we aim to provide you with valuable insights into the world of clay shooting. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it. For more insights, training tips, and updates on upcoming events, Dawn Grant and Amelia Shotgun Sports are on all social media platforms. Go to dawngrant.com and come shoot at Amelia Shotgun Sports. Stay focused, stay driven, and keep pushing your limits. Until next time, Dawn wishes you success and happiness on your journey to peak performance and industry mastery.